Welcome, everyone. Today, we continue our series of programs entitled League of Women Voter, Empowering You, a program designed by the League of Women Voters in partnership with Dayton Access TV to provide unbiased, nonpartisan information on issues that are relevant to our friends and neighbors throughout the greater Dayton area. My name is David Bodary. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters and your host tonight for this program as we meet Secretary of State Frank LaRose to learn more about plans for our upcoming election. Our guests this evening include Frank LaRose, Secretary of State, former state senator where he served 2 terms in the 27th District, and Andrea Cobb. She is the president of the Greater Dayton League of Women Voters. I've worn my mask this evening because I recognize that we need to be safe. We are socially distanced, and so we're going to take our masks off, and that way we'll be able to hear and understand one another, and you'll be able to hear and understand us as well. It's a significant year for the League, as it was 100 years ago that many women in Ohio and across our nation gained the right to have their voice heard by way of the vote. Of course, many of those early suffragists formed the League of Women Voters in order to ensure their right and to help inform others. Andrea is here from the Greater Dayton League. Can you help us, the listeners, understand the League's role in elections as they go on?
Sure. The League of Women Voters is a trusted resource for nonpartisan information about candidates and elections. We do candidate interviews. We are doing those in the pandemic COVID times. We will be doing those with Dayton TV and the MVCC. Filming within a couple of weeks, and that will be available on their websites as well as ours, lwvdayton.org. We are registering voters in safe, socially distant manner.
Sure.
With the food bank, Dayton Metro Housing Authority, House of Bread, a few other places.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, we publish our nonpartisan voters guide, which will be out in the early fall. I believe the Secretary of State will be contributing a little bit of information for that. And in there we have interviews, written, questions answered, written in the candidate's own words, not edited in any form or fashion by us, from the Montgomery County and Greene County elections.
And so as we are thinking about it, remember the election is November 3rd, right? It's the first Tuesday of the month of November. But that means a person has to be registered to vote when?
Ohio's law 30 days prior. They need to be registered by October 5th, 2020. And I'm sure people have heard in the news that Postal Service may be backed up a little bit. So if you are going to register by then, get busy and request your absentee ballot if you're going to.
Perfect. Thank you, Andrea. It's an honor, and what I've done on my research, it's the Honorable Secretary of State is the official title. Is that right?
Frank works fine though, David.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us in Dayton, and we really appreciate it. I took a look at the state website where your role is described as the Chief Elections Officer, responsible for secure, accurate, and accessible elections in our state. And I thought, man, what a big responsibility. Help us understand what you've been up to.
Well, so my job, as you mentioned, is to make sure that every registered voter in Ohio has the opportunity to engage in a safe and an accessible experience and in an honest election. We've got great partners, our 88 county boards of elections, these thoroughly bipartisan organizations that really do the day-to-day work, and then outside organizations that have a great history and a great heritage of advocating for voting rights, like, for example, the League of Women Voters. And the League is a frequent visitor to our office now. It's more remote visiting, but we talk frequently. And groups like the NAACP and the A. Philip Randolph Institute and so many others that have a history of really engaging in voting rights conversations. What I specifically have been doing, especially this year, is really focused on how we can make sure that Ohioans have that same normal election experience that they've always had, right? And nothing in our lives is normal right now. I think we all know that many things have been turned upside down from what we're accustomed to, but as much as things have changed, there are some things that are rock solid, that never change, that are timeless, right? That idea that every citizen should have their voice heard, that every vote counts, that every vote matters. And that's, not just something that we say in Ohio, that's how we live. And that's how we live at the Secretary of State's office and at your bipartisan county boards of elections. And so to be clear at the start of the conversation, we want to make sure that Ohioans have those same three choices that they've had for nearly 20 years. And that means that Ohioans will have 4 weeks of early voting, which includes convenient evening and weekend hours. We're one of very few states in the nation that offers that. We're going to make sure that Ohioans have 4 weeks of absentee voting so that those that want it can vote from the comfort and convenience of home. It's a secure and trusted process in Ohio. And we're going to make sure that Ohioans have in-person election day voting as well, if that's what they choose. And they're going to be greeted by one of their neighbors. Their neighbors will be smiling, but you won't know that because they'll have a mask on. But they'll be greeted by one of their neighbors who will welcome them to the polling location and help them go through the process and then give them an I voted sticker on the way out, just like we've been accustomed to for many, many years.
I really appreciate that. So we've always had, I shouldn't say always, we have had for a long time these three modes, right?
Absolutely.
The absentee ballot, the voting in person but early
Yes.
voting, and then obviously on election day you get to vote. So, but with the pandemic going on, there probably have been some impacts. Anything you can share as it relates to the impact of the pandemic and what we're doing to sort of ensure the safe opportunities for people to vote?
Well, the bottom line is it's taken the difficult work of running elections for 7.8 million people and made it even more difficult.
Sure.
Started my day at the Hancock County Board of Elections today. I've last year visited all 88 county boards of elections, and I try to get out and visit with our boards as often as I can. And our boards of elections reflect the great diversity of Ohio. Each board reflects the character of that community, and each community is a little bit different. But I can tell you that at the boards of elections, they're focused on making sure that they have the right protective equipment for their poll workers, and they're using a large influx of federal dollars that I chose to push out to our county boards of elections. And not every state is doing it that way, but I decided that those dollars should go out where the resources are needed. I served in the military for 10 years, so I use military analogies, but out on the front lines, right? Sure. Where the work is really being done, and that's at the county board of elections. And so protective equipment is being made available that way, but also the right protocols for wiping down the machines, separating the machines, and that kind of thing. And then probably the thing that we're thinking about now more than anything else is poll worker recruitment. We know that a large number of our poll workers, over 60%, are senior Ohioans. Many of them have for decades been offering their time to work the polls, and that's wonderful. Many of them league members. In fact, just a few months ago, we honored a woman down in Cincinnati who had been a poll worker for 55 years. Now think about that. The 19th Amendment was only ratified 100 years ago when finally women received the right to vote. This great intrepid poll worker who had never missed an election had worked more than half of that time. We need a new generation of poll workers, and I'd love to talk about some of the exciting plans that we've come up with on poll worker recruitment, but it's something that we're doing every day to make sure that when Ohioans do show up to vote, that they're going to be greeted by one of their neighbors who's ready to help them through the process. And then, of course, we know that we're going to see a higher volume of vote by mail this year than we've ever seen. That's a good thing. I hope it starts a new habit for people. I hope they realize really how convenient and secure it is and take advantage of that into the future. We normally would expect 20-25% of our ballots to come in by mail. I'm telling our board, and I know this is a lofty goal, but we got to be prepared for this. I'm telling our boards of elections to be prepared for as much as twice that many. They need to have the equipment, the staff, and be prepared to do that. By the way, the federal dollars that we're pushing out to our boards helps them to be prepared for that, but they need to make sure that they're ready for the highest volume of vote by mail, absentee voting that we've ever seen in our state's history. And that's something that we're making sure that we're ready for as well.
I appreciate that. You're so thorough. There's a number of things I want to follow up on.
Sure.
One would be the PPE side of things, right? So a person is going to the polls and they want to rest assured that it's going to be safe.
Yeah.
Will there be a plexiglass there between them and a poll worker? Will there be other forms of masks and things like that?
So right now we are taking guidance from three different groups, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Ohio Department of Health, and then our local health commissioners and health departments, and we're working on melding building that together because it was getting a little confusing for our boards of elections. We want them to follow their local guidance, but then again, they're hearing this from CDC. So what we're doing is right now, as we speak, consolidating that into easy to follow instructions for the county boards of elections to say, this is what an average polling location should look like. This is the sort of the standard that we want you to meet. And then you can ratchet that up based on your local conditions if you need to. In some places, it may not be practicable for them to have those plexiglass shields, but instead they may create a spacing or a distancing. We found creative ways. Plexiglass isn't always available. Sometimes we may need to use shower curtains. I built one for our customer service desk out of PVC pipe and then used that stretchy film that you use on your windows on the winter that insulates them. And so, there's a lot of creative ideas out there, and we're all getting handy about how we do that. So those are the kind of standards that we're putting in place, but rest assured, we're going to make sure that it's safe for both poll workers and for voters. Again, that means personal protective equipment, that means spacing, that means the right protocols. And again, we do all we can to avoid lines, but if there are lines, we're going to make people stand 6 feet apart. That'll make the lines look longer, right? I mean, candidly, but we want to make sure that we're abiding by that safety. Look at the creativity that our private sector businesses in Ohio are engaging in, our restaurants and our grocery stores. Really great ingenuity that they're bringing to the table to make sure their customers are safe. And so people asked me, I was just up in Seneca County, they said, can we have in-person voting? And I said, can you have grocery shopping? Yes, you can. Can you have restaurants? Yes, you can. We just have to be safe about it. And that's what we're going to do in Ohio.
Right. So it leads me to think about one of the things that I had a person say, well, why don't we have voting outside? And I'm like, well, there's probably a number of reasons why.
November.
Yeah, it's November, and it's uncertain in terms of things. But at the same time, I recognize what they're saying is, gosh, is there some way we can ensure that it's done safely? And that's what I hear you saying is you've got various options, whether it be distancing, whether it be the plexiglass or other ways that people can do it. And of course, absentee voting means that I can vote from the security of my own home, and I don't have to worry about it at all. Let's take a minute and think about if I were to first request an absentee ballot, right? And that's the beginning of the process.
Yes, it is, yeah.
And I can do that through the league, but I could also do that other ways.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
A lot of different ways. Now, I'd like to see that be available online. And I've been advocating for that for 5 years, so it's not a new idea. When I was a state senator, I did the bill that created online voter registration, and that took a few years to convince the legislature to do that. Sometimes people want to be cautious about new technology, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, 5 years ago when we did online voter registration, I said, let's do online absentee ballot requests. Basically the same technology, and it's easy for us to do in a safe and secure way. I have not been able to convince the legislature to let me do that yet, but we're going to keep pushing for it. In the meantime, there's still simple ways to do it. Now, it does require you to mail a form to your Board of Elections. That's the part that's antiquated. I mean, it requires a dead tree piece of paper with a wet ink signature on it, right? But there's a couple different ways you can get that. First of all, we are mailing the absentee request form to every registered voter in the state. In fact,
So you have decided to go ahead and make
absolutely,
great
100%. In fact, I'm able to do it with all federal dollars.
Okay.
I'm able to take CARES Act dollars that we're receiving from the federal government, and so that'll happen around Labor Day weekend. That's when we're going to do the first one, but then we're going to do several successive waves of it because remember, people continue to register after Labor Day weekend, and when we say we want to get one in the hands of every registered voter, that's exactly what we mean. So watch for those around Labor Day weekend to start arriving, and it'll be in a self-addressed envelope, so it's easy to mail it to the Board of Elections. There's a couple other ways, though. You can go to voteohio.gov. In fact, you can do it today. You don't have to wait, and we're asking you to do it today. We want people to flatten the election curve, right, and get our boards of elections a head start because they're going to be very busy in October. If you wait until late October to request your absentee ballot, you're not doing the board any favor. Now, we'll still, we'll still process it, but we need you to try to do it as soon as you can. But you can go to voteohio.gov. You can print the form off right there, fill it out, sign it, mail it in. You can also make your own form because some people say, I don't have a printer. And so here's a creative idea that we've been trying to market to Ohioans. If you go to voteohio.gov/make-your-own, we've set up instructions right there, really a plain piece of notebook paper and a pen. All you got to do is write down. It doesn't have to be some fancy government form. As long as you give us all the necessary things that are on there and sign it, then get it to your Board of Elections, then you can get your absentee ballot in the mail. And so that's something that we're trying to encourage Ohioans to do as soon as they can. Don't delay.
All right, so we've got my absentee ballot request form. I now get my ballot in the mail. And so now I need to think about who I'm going to vote for, and I fill out my ballot properly.
Yes.
Any tips or suggestions there? And
Don't use red ink.
I was going to say probably not a red ink pen or a pink marker or something.
Yeah,
Other
so
things.
when you fill out your ballot, make sure you follow the instructions on there. Bubble in completely. Don't make extraneous marks. You'd be amazed. Every Board of Elections has their horror stories of people that doodle on their ballots, and don't do that. Make sure you sign it. Make sure you fill out the envelope correctly. When it says birth date, that's not today's date. That's probably the most common mistake that gets made. For identification, it's either the last four of your Social Security number or your state driver's license or an alternative form of ID. Those are easy things for most Ohioans. And then don't wait. First of all, you've got to put 55 cents worth of postage on it. This is something else that I've been frustrated with, candidly, because the legislature has failed to follow our advice on this. And I know that the league is with us on this, and the county boards of elections agree in a bipartisan way that we should do this. And I've been calling on this. We should provide postage paid for those absentee ballot mailings. It's not necessarily the 55 cents that's the problem, although that for some people that's a significant cost. It's the fact that many people just don't have postage stamps. It's not a part of their daily life, and so rooting through the drawer in the kitchen to find that one postage stamp at the bottom is not something we want to ask voters to do. But unfortunately, for now, until we can get permission from the state legislature, you have to put a 55-cent, first-class postage stamp on there, and then don't wait. It's got to be mailed in. It's got to be postmarked by Monday, the day before the election, but don't wait until then.
Right.
The sooner you can get it in, the better, and then you can track it just like you track a package you order online. You can go to voteohio.gov, type in your name, and you can make sure that it's been received by the Board of Elections, so you know for sure that your voice is going to be heard.
That's so important. Go ahead,
Right,
Andy.
well, I was going to ask, are there drop boxes at the Board of Elections?
Yes,
locally?
indeed. Every county has a secure drop box. And there's a question from some counties about can they add additional ones, and I've asked the Attorney General for his opinion on that, because the law is really gray on that. What we don't want to do is create a bunch of confusion with lawsuits right up at the end. But every county has at least one. Most of them are drive-up drop boxes where all you got to do is drive
I
up
think
and you
ours
can
is
put
on
it in.
3rd
So-
Street, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
right outside of the county building and across the street from the Sinclair College.
They're all under video surveillance. They're all serviced daily by a bipartisan team. Everything in the Board of Elections is bipartisan. One Republican and one Democrat, they come out there and empty it. And so that's another great way to do it. If you don't want to put it in the mail, you can put it in the drop box at your county Board of Elections.
Okay. I want to recognize that Dayton a year ago was hit by a tornado that has created some transience in terms of people's home versus where they're staying. And so any concerns or suggestions, insights as it relates to those individuals who have been displaced because of that incident, and maybe things they should worry or think about?
Something to think about. The state law says that if you have an intent to return, that can be your address. And I'll give you an example. I, again, spent 10 years in the Army. I traveled around. I was at Fort Bragg and Fort Benning and Fort Campbell. Those were never home to me. That was just where, and I always considered Ohio the place I intended to return. So I can remain an a Ohio voter during that time. And again, that's the case for college students as well if they intend to return. If you've been displaced due to a natural disaster, but you intend to return to that place, then legally you can vote in the place here in Ohio that you intend to return. What's important, obviously, is you have to choose. You can't vote in multiple locations.
Right.
If you do, that's a felony. It's a serious matter. So you just choose which one. Of course, if you have any questions, contact your Board of Elections. There's a great team down there, whether it's here at the Montgomery County Board of Elections or any other Board of Elections in the state. They'll work with you, particularly those that are in this circumstance.
Absolutely. And of course, Andy and I have college-age students, so those college-age students have a similar decision to make. Are they going to stay and vote in their home district, wherever that permanent residence might be, or are they going to vote where their college campus might be, whether that be University of Dayton campus or perhaps some out-of-state institution. So,
and we're working with universities to provide support on that as well. And many college campuses have college Republican and college Democratic clubs that will help with their fellow students on that kind of thing. And one thing I want to see our college students do, since they're going to submit their absentee ballot, hopefully that frees them up so they're available on election day to sign up to be a poll worker, which is what we really need.
well,
So-
let's go back there
Yeah.
then. This is a perfect chance. Have you done poll work, Andrea?
I have not worked,
Yeah.
but I am signed up to work this year. This will be my first. My
Congratulations.
parents have
Thank
done
you.
it for years, and
Yep.
and they are not doing it this year, both due to age and
Yeah. Well, thank
they're
you.
in the more vulnerable
Sure. Yeah.
population. But I was listening to the task force report earlier this last week. You're doing some interesting things to recruit some of the younger generation,
Yeah.
CPE hours and youth at the booth, and tell us a little
Trying
bit
to
more
come
about
up with
that.
as many creative ideas as we can. It's kind of like all hands on deck effort at this point. So yeah, you mentioned, in fact, I'm going to be meeting with my team at the Secretary of State's office here in a couple days. We're putting these packages together so that we can get them out to the boards of elections where they'll have social media toolkits and template letters that they can just print off and get out, and it sort of makes the marketing part of this easier for them. But we have a few programs that we've come up with. One that we just announced, and you just mentioned this, any lawyer in the state of Ohio can get continuing education credits now if they sign up to be a poll worker and do the training. This took a while, and we started working on this long before anybody knew what COVID-19 was. We were petitioning the Ohio Supreme Court to do this starting last year, and we finally got permission, and I really appreciate Chief Justice O'Connor who signed off on this and made it official, and the team at the Ohio Supreme Court that reviewed our application for this. And so yes, CLE credits for lawyers that sign up to be poll workers. We're working on others as well. There's a lot of other professional organizations in the state that require continuing education. We're talking right now with the people that do continuing education for engineers and teachers and others as well to try to convince them. But lawyers were kind of the obvious one,
Sure.
and it would be a great thing for the legal profession, as they have for so many centuries, really, to be able to contribute to the civic life of our state in this way. Another one that we've come up with is Youth at the Booth, and this is something that we've had in Ohio for a number of years. If you're a 17-year-old high school senior, you can sign up to be a poll worker. And here's an added benefit. Of course, it's great peer pressure, positive peer pressure. Imagine when the students go to school the next day, and let's hope that by November they're going to school, they can say to their peers, hey, what were you doing yesterday? I was running the presidential election. That's kind of a cool thing.
That is cool.
And it's a great way to distinguish themselves on a college application, because many colleges are not looking at ACT and SAT scores due to the pandemic. And so you can distinguish yourself as a young Ohioan by signing up for Youth at the Booth. And again, the place for all of these is to go to voteohio.gov/defenddemocracy, voteohio.gov/defenddemocracy. You can sign up to be a poll worker. Another one that we're doing is called Give a Day for Democracy, where we're encouraging businesses, not just businesses, but governments, nonprofits, to give their employees a day off to be a poll worker. And we're asking them to give their employees a free day off. Don't charge them a vacation day for that. And we just had a big announcement down in Cincinnati a few weeks ago where Western and Southern Financial,
Wow.
a big respected company in Ohio, has agreed to give their employees a paid day off if they want to sign up to be poll workers. And so we're working to encourage more to do that, and we'll have some more announcements on that as well.
That's
Another
exciting.
one is called Work a Day and Donate Your Pay. What we're finding is a lot of nonprofit groups out there are struggling with having their annual fundraiser, the picnic or the fair or the festival, just not possible in this environment. And so if you are the local Rotary Club or Elks Lodge or Veterans Hall or whatever, and you can convince your members to sign up to be poll workers, and then they will commit to donating their poll worker salary back to the organization, it can be a fundraiser for you. For many people, they want to sign up to be poll workers because of a sense of duty, civic duty, patriotism, and that kind of thing. And so the $150, $180 that they're paid for is not the real motivation. So it can be a fundraiser for their club. And then a final one, which is near and dear to me as a veteran myself, is I'm reaching out to veterans groups. In fact, just wrote a column for a statewide veterans newsletter that talked about how we took an oath to preserve and protect the Constitution. That's a lifelong commitment. Obviously, many people here in the Miami Valley have made that commitment as well as veterans. That lifelong commitment means that you need to continue finding ways to keep that commitment. And signing up to be a poll worker is a great way to continue keeping your oath to preserve and protect the American Constitution.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I think I saw Scratch Pizza, and I'm going to throw that
Yes,
name out there.
yes.
Is going to offer their employees an opportunity to use the day in support of the poll working, and I don't think it's being charged as a vacation day or anything like that. So and that's just a
Nice to see small businesses.
a mom and
taking
pop
part.
kind of
We've been
well.
there. We took our staff there.
Oh, good.
Actually, in fact, I think after we were at your event, we may
Oh.
have stopped by there. So yeah, we've been there. Great pie, and I'm an Italian, so I'm picky with my pizza.
That's unpaid for solicitation
Yeah.
there, whatever. Thank you. I think this is so important. And of course, as a student, I remember having the opportunity to, use some of my time as a high school age student to go and to work the polls. And some of my colleagues did it, and it was really a powerful thing. So it's so cool. And it's paid too. So then if a student is looking to make a little bit of money and have something to add to the resume, they could do those things.
Absolutely.
And of course, they'll have the PPE.
Yes,
And
they will.
are there other roles that are needed in terms of volunteers besides that day? Are there other
So we've been exploring this with the boards of elections because the main thing that we need is poll workers, right? And that's where there's 35,000 that are needed. I mean, think
Wow.
about the scale of that. We have normally 4,000 polling locations. We'd love to have all 4,000 of those open. I mean, we've been asked, are you going to consolidate polling locations? I certainly hope we don't have to. Of course, that's a decision that's made by your bipartisan county board of elections. But the only reason we would have to consolidate polling locations at the county level would be if there's not sufficient poll workers. And so again, if you want to help us be one of those 35,000, then we need to, and yes, there will be PPE made available. But as far as other volunteers, you know, I've heard some ideas. Some boards of elections, they need people to help distribute the machines. Maybe something like the person that passes out the I voted sticker. You know, I've said that if students are not going to be in school that day, maybe that could be Boy Scout and Girl Scout volunteers that do that. I don't think you have to be an official poll worker to pass out the I voted sticker. So maybe they could sort of have auxiliary volunteers that do that. Or, you know, we offer in Ohio curbside voting. A lot of people don't realize this, and it's really intended for those that can't go into a polling location because of disability, but those that are uncomfortable going into a polling location because of COVID could also request a curbside ballot, and then a bipartisan team of elections officials will come in and do that. And maybe that's another place where there could be volunteers that help as runners to go in and say, hey, somebody outside needs to vote curbside.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So thank you so much. We've got maybe just about a minute left. I want to remind people that we've talked about a lot of ideas. We are going to put up on screen a couple of the websites that are available for individuals that are interested in learning more. One from the Montgomery County Poll Workers page and the other from the Greene County Poll Workers page, because of course this is available to the whole Dayton region. I want to thank our guests, the Honorable Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, and of course, my colleague and friend, Andrea Cobb, President of the Greater Dayton League of Women Voters. We're celebrating a centennial year. I'm so proud to be part of it, so proud that for the last 100 years, women in the United States have had the opportunity to vote and to express that voice. So I want to continue to encourage people to do so. Thank you too to the audience for watching today, the League of Women Voters Empowering You. The League encourages everyone to be a voter by being registered to vote and actively voting in every election. So if you have further questions about how to register, how to vote, or any of our upcoming programs, you can contact the League by emailing league@lwvdayton.org or calling us at the office. That's 937-228-4041. I want you to stay safe, be well, and of course, be a voter in every election. Wash your hands, wear a mask, keep your social distance, and be well.